I've been reminiscing on my paranormal experiences and thought to share one of them in the spirit of the spooky season. I'm pretty sure the last house I lived in was haunted, and here's why. Up until last year, I was living in a shared house with a longtime friend. We've known each other since high school, and because of a few fortunate events, we ended up living together in a couple of places. The house we lived in at the time was getting too small for us, and that's how we found our new place that I solemnly believe till this day was haunted. At the beginning of summer 2020, we both agreed it was time to search for a new place, somewhere that was more convenient and spacious. And when the time was right, I found a Facebook ad for a beautiful grade 2 listed building right in the middle of our town center. The place was super spacious, had more room than we could have asked for, tall ceilings, and old sash windows with a beautiful view of our town center. I love anything old and antique, so I instantly fell in love with it. When we first went to view it, it was full of light, warmth, and felt super inviting, so we made our decision pretty fast, and after a couple of days of back and forth with the landlords, we completed necessary paperwork and started packing, and a month later, we were moving. On the day of our move, we noticed one big difference. The place was very dark and cold, and nothing like it felt the first time we saw it. We were still in the middle of summer, but inside it was around 6 degrees Celsius, which was baffling. I've visited many old buildings in my time, but I've never felt cold radiating off the walls like that. There was also a very thick wall between mine and my friend's bedroom, which no matter how hard we knocked on, we couldn't hear each other. It was the end of June, and we both had 2 electric heaters going for most of the day, but to no avail, the heat just wouldn't stay. Our first night was cold and pretty much sleepless, because every time I felt myself drifting off, a noise would wake me up and I couldn't settle. It wasn't anything particular, more like ordinary house creaking noises we're all very used to, but the frequency of them was off. It was as if the house wouldn't let me fall asleep. I didn't question it as much as I should have maybe, because I was naturally anxious for my first night in a new place, so I didn't expect much sleep anyways. There's an old saying in my family that the first dream you have in your new house is very important, as it will tell you if the place is good for you and if you'll have good fortune there. Once I finally managed to get some sleep and basically fell into what I felt like was a mini coma, I remember being chased through the house by a tall, dark, shadowy figure, and that definitely wasn't a good sign. Throughout our first week, we finally managed to get used to the noises and had a full night of sleep. I didn't remember having any dreams after. It all felt kind of blank, as if I didn't dream at all. But sooner rather than later, new things began happening, and there was always issues with the construction of the building. Strange, pungent-smelling leaks would appear out of nowhere, even when we were going through a heat wave, which in the part of the UK we lived in would get very dry. We'd get frequent power cuts, with no other buildings being affected, just us. It was common knowledge among our family and friends that there was always something going on with our building. It felt like the house just didn't want to be lived in. Contractors would come out to fix the constant leaking roof, but a couple of days later it'd just come back stronger, without a single drop of rain outside. The landlords were tired and baffled by the constant small disasters we would call them about. And as I'm writing this, they sold the building about 3 months ago. I'm guessing things haven't changed much and they simply had enough. I remember one particular night when it felt like things reached a completely new level, and it wasn't just about small, confusing repairs. It was about to get very paranormal and very personal. I just came back home from work and was unpacking some groceries I bought on my way back. The kitchen was never my favorite place in the building. It always felt uneasy being there alone, especially when I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Our toilet and shower room were separate and had small vestibules with some utilities and storage. The fridge stood right next to the one which led to our shower, so I could always see into it with the corner of my eye. I nearly finished putting things away in the fridge when I caught a glimpse of something, and instantly froze. For a moment, I thought I saw a dark, tall figure just standing there, but when I looked again, it was gone. It looked exactly like the shadowy figure from my dream, the only dream I've had since we moved there. An overwhelming sense of dread crawled up my spine, and I darted out of there as fast as I could. The place looked empty, but I could feel 1,000 eyes watching me from every direction. My love for the paranormal and occult has taught me that this particular feeling is probably the worst sign of an evil entity being present. Apparitions aren't as dangerous, even though they might seem like it at first, but a feeling of being watched, as if something's hovering above you with their claws stretched out, just waiting to pull you in, is a very, very bad sign, and it most likely isn't your grandma visiting you from the afterlife. A few days later, I told my friend about what happened, and she said she experienced something similar while taking a shower a couple nights back. It's as if the same tall, dark shadow figure hovered in the corner of the shower room, just below the attic flap. She hated that flap since we moved in, and always mentioned that it felt off, like something was up there and could come out at any time. For the next few weeks, we would watch the house closely and tell each other if we'd find anything suspicious. We didn't see the figure again, but an overwhelming sense of dread and fear had started to spread across the whole house, making us question what the hell was going on. Things didn't look great. The building would pull tricks on us more often, and one night, I watched my ceiling nearly split in half as the plaster cracked all the way across my bedroom. Apparently, it wasn't anything dangerous, but it certainly didn't feel like it at the time when I laid in my bed and watched the whole thing happen. Me and my friend both began entertaining the thought of moving somewhere else, even though the original plan was to stay there for a few years. The atmosphere was becoming unbearable, and so we had to make a choice, or rather, it was made for us during our last power cut. That was our breaking point. It was around midnight when the lights went off, and we met at the landing with our tiny emergency flashlights we always used to check the fuse box. Most often than not, the fuses were okay, but we always checked anyways because the thought of having to sit in the dark, not knowing what's next, was way too disturbing, especially at the time. We went down 2 flights of stairs to get to the awkwardly fitted fuse box right below our tall ceiling, and began investigating when my friend's shoulder got pulled back, as if something was trying to grab her. We both screamed and ran back to my bedroom, where we hoped and waited for the power to come back. It was probably the longest 2.5 hours of my life. We didn't wait long before applying for a new house, but every new place we found just wouldn't happen. There was always a different reason, like the paperwork issues or other applicants got ahead of us. I eventually moved back with my parents to save up for my own place because the chances of getting anything looked more bleak with each week, and we didn't want to stay in that house any longer. And that's how I left that house. Sometimes, when I visit town center, I walk by the building and feel the same sense of dread from before, as if something or someone is staring down at me, wanting to reach out and pull me back in to finish what it started. And from time to time still, I get the same dream I had that first night we moved there, but I always manage to get away. I wonder what the new residents have to deal with, and if they're okay. I grew up middle class. My mom was a waitress and worked nights, and my father was a correctional officer and he worked nights as well. As I got older, my parents were starting to get more confident leaving me alone. My sisters were always having sleepovers with their friends, so by no choice of their own, they'd have no other option than to leave me by myself. Didn't bother me at all. I was pretty savvy at filling my time with something to do. One night, when I was about 8, my father was leaving for work. Mom was already at work. Both sisters were spending the night at a friend's house, and I was getting anxious, not because of anything bad, but I couldn't wait for him to leave so I could run around and search my sister's room for some cool stuff. They always had some cool stuff that I specifically couldn't touch. In particular, a Polaroid camera, which one of my sisters got. It wasn't one of the old ones that you've seen in movies. It was a smaller rectangular one that would print these small pictures on top of some adhesive strip so you could stick them on your walls, notebooks, or binders. The thought of getting my hands on it was getting overwhelming. When my father finally left at 10 p.m., I immediately ran upstairs, grabbed the thing, and just started snapping away. The roll of film had about 5 in it. I ran around her room taking pictures until the roll ran out. These needed to be developed under light, so I ran downstairs to put these under the table lamp, anxiously waiting to see my amazing work. It took about 30 minutes for the film to develop. I ogled at these pictures, amazed by the whole process. The feeling of snapping a photo, and developing it was just a high in itself for me. I looked at each one: her bed, the wall again, the hallway to her room, the top of the staircase, down the staircase. I was in bliss, but I ran through the roll of film, so the fun felt like it ran its course. I wasn't having it, so I ran back upstairs to scour her room for a new roll. 20 minutes of searching paid off. I found it. I reload quickly, then give myself an allotment of 8 photos, so it wouldn't seem like I wasted her film. I tried to make these 8 photos count. I won't get into the details of each one, but the 3 that matter for the story's sake. The first photo was of the hallway. I peered through the lens and snapped away. The second was the top of the staircase, and the third was looking down the staircase. I rushed down the stairs to snap the rest. I finish and get right to developing. The excitement was overwhelming. It was about 11:30 p.m. when the film developed. I looked over each one, giddy at my work, until I got to the staircase. The photo looking down the staircase held something that scared the crap out of me. As I looked at the photo, I saw the figure of a man, no face, wearing all black. I could vaguely make out clothes and a cigarette in its ear. I panicked, called my mom, who then told me to call the police. The phone call with my mom was so quick, she didn't even care what I did. I tried to deliver the whole thing as innocently as possible, but after I told her about this figure, she said hang up and dial 911. Here's my problem. I had to walk down the stairs that this thing was on. There are only 2 ways to go up/down, and I was literally looking down the stairs as I snapped the photo. The fact that I didn't see anyone, or walk past anyone, or hear anyone, messed me up. I'm like, how? My stairs at the time were already pretty old, so they squeaked from all my 8-year-old 60 pounds. It would have definitely startled me, hearing a full-size person in my house going up the stairs. The picture itself is definitely something too. I can blame the camera, but I don't know. I was doing everything correctly. You can definitely make out a person, and most definitely a cigarette. The cops come, and as a kid, I could already tell they weren't taking me seriously. They showed up with smiles and asking a bunch of questions that made me think calling them was pointless. They eventually searched the house and found nothing. When I showed them the pictures, they completely brushed them off. I was growing irate with them, truthfully, and I was getting even more scared because it felt like no one believed me. But my mom was rushing home and arrived after the search of the house. The police told her the whole thing, and they ended up leaving us. I spent the night with my mom, and she definitely believed me after seeing the photo, and even tried to figure it out with her friends over the following weeks. Now, every time people bring up their ghost stories, I call her up, even 21 years later, so we can tell this one. I'm not saying this was a ghost rather than some freaky stuff. This wasn't a camera malfunction. Someone was in the house with me that I managed to walk past, not see, nor hear. This story starts when I was about 4 to 5 years old, and just before my family moved into our new house. It was the last night in my old house. I slept on the bottom bunk, while my older sister slept on the top bunk. I was excited to be moving as there weren't many kids in my current neighborhood, and I would also be getting my own room. I had this white kitten toy that I can't remember where it came from. It would meow, purr, and make biscuits. I believe it also blinked. I was laying in bed, trying to fall asleep. Occasionally I would hear a noise and assumed it was my sister, and I would ask if she was awake, but she never answered me. I eventually got tired and stared at the top of my bunk. Another shuffling noise happened, and I felt something on my blanket near my feet. I thought it was one of our cats, specifically my cat Sid. I wish it was my cat. It was this black shadowy mass that looked like a hand. I accidentally squeezed my cat toy too tight and it started purring. The hand began to move up my bed, feeling around, and I froze. This was around the age I believed in monsters under my bed, so this was never taken seriously by anyone else. The hand crept closer and closer, feeling around until it found the tail of my kitten toy. It grabbed the tail, slowly pulling it off the bed. I heard it hit the ground and then get dragged under my bed. I stayed up for a long time, trying to make sense of what happened. Eventually, though, I did fall into a nightmarish sleep and was woken up the next morning by light coming through the window. I got out of bed carefully and looked under, expecting to see the toy, but it wasn't there. Eventually, my dad disassembled the bunk bed to move it, and I spent the morning scouring the house trying to find my white kitten. I told my mom I couldn't find it. I told my older brother and my older sister, but no one had seen it. The house was empty, and I was walking with my mom making sure that everything has been packed up and we weren't leaving anything behind. There was still no sign of my white kitten. We had to leave though, and I kept thinking about that incident for a few more days, but it fell out of my mind at some point. Now, fast forward a few years down the road. I'm about 12 at this point, and we'd been renting out our old house to a family member. When they didn't want to renew their lease, we came back to clean up after they were gone. I was given the main floor to clean, my brother the basement, and my parents cleaned the exterior. I started in the living room, vacuuming and dusting, then moved on to the bedrooms. When I got to my old room, I pushed the door open and looked inside. There, on the carpet, where my bunk beds used to be, was that white kitten toy. Half of one of its ears was gone. It was covered in a gray soot-like dust and was matted beyond belief. At first I was disgusted by it, not remembering the toy at all, and went to pick it up by that intact ear and throw it away. Then the toy started purring and moving its fake paws like it was needing something. I froze, staring at the toy, before dropping it and the trash bag, walking out of my room, needing to get away. The cat toy continued to meow loudly to the point my mom came inside to look. She threw the toy away while I was drinking something outside watching my dad mow the lawn. I could have marked it all off as just a coincidence. It was a pretty popular toy anyways, and I wasn't the only one that had one. But my initials were on the tag of that toy. This was one of my close, uncomfortable moments with something supernatural, and it still haunts me when I think about it.